So we are now discussing elements of IMC, and one of the first elements or main elements of IMC is advertising. Advertising is basically any form of non-personal promotion transmitted through a mass medium. Advertising has various functions, and one of the main functions of advertising is that it provides tangible clues. Remembering that we've discussed previously about the characteristics of events, one of which is intangibility, and advertising through providing tangible clues counteracts the intangible nature of the event. Advertising also seeks continuity over time through the use of recognizable symbols, music, trademark, and spokespersons. It also promises what is possible in order to create realistic expectations. Now, if you remember, we've previously talked about how the expectations of event attendees are formed through various methods, and one of the ways by which the expectations are formed are through advertisements. So by making promises, hopefully realistic promises, expectations and realistic expectations are formed in consumers. And finally, the last function, which is very relevant to the first function we already discussed, is that advertising makes the service, or in this case the event experience, more recognizable. So whether it be a print ad in a newspaper, where a photograph is shown of attendees having a good time and enjoying themselves and all smiling and laughing, or a video ad in TV or on social media, which again shows the interactions among event attendees and the good times and enjoyable times that they're having, the service becomes, or the experience becomes, more recognizable. There are different media used for advertising. So we have radio as a advertising media. We have television, newspaper, and magazines. We have the event's website. Social networking sites can also be used as a medium for advertising, which we will discuss more next week. We also have outdoor advertising, so billboards or bus shelters, as you can see in this slide, are sources of are instances of outdoor advertising. And finally, we have mobile platforms, so buses, taxis, or trams, again, which you can see on the slide, are instances and examples of mobile platforms for advertising. Now, when we're talking about advertisements, there are different elements of an advert that need to be taken into account. The very first element of an advert is the message. So the message should not only be informative and provide information to potential event attendees, but it also has to be inspirational. So you don't want to bore your potential attendees with dull messages. The message should also be considerate of the target market, so you should have good knowledge of your target market and take their attributes and characteristics into account when producing a message in your advert. So, for example, an advert of a music festival aiming at 18 to 25-year-olds would be very different in terms of the message that it's conveying with an advert of a charity gala concert aimed at older and more affluent audiences. The next element of an advert is the copy, and that's the way the message is phrased and presented on the ad. Obviously, a copy for TV advert is very different to the copy of a radio advert. So the copy for TV advert is usually shorter than a copy for a radio advert, because the TV, it incorporates visuals which can communicate various elements of the marketing message, and a radio advert does not have that advantage. The next element of an advert is the visuals, obviously the images that are used, or the sequences or sequence of images used for a TV advert. And then we have other elements, important elements of an advert, and these are the logos, disclaimers. More recently, QR codes are being used in adverts, and then endorsements. So any association approval stamp or the industry approval stamp, those are all parts of an element of an advert. I have two samples of event adverts here. One is a video, a TV ad or a video ad of the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival, and the other one is a print ad of the music festival. And I'd just like you in your own time to have a look at these two adverts and compare them in terms of the different elements of an advert that we just discussed. The next element of IMC, an important element, is PR or public relations. So basically, public relation is used to build mutually beneficial relationships with stakeholders and with consumers. And I've got a quote here by Jackson, who mentions that public relation is basically how an event can defend and manage and change its reputation. So according to Jackson, public relation can be both a loud tactical tool where you use it in order to draw attention to your event. It can also be a quiet strategic tool where you want to change opinions or the perceptions of your target market towards the event. So it is known that PR is more believable because it's usually a third party account of your event, and it presents a more objective view of the event. So therefore it is believed that as compared to advertising, PR is more believable and trustworthy. Now, when looking into PR and public relation, it's important to have a PR plan in place. And for the PR to be successful, the PR plan is important to have that plan in place. So a PR plan starts off by having a vision and identity. So it's important as the first step to generate an identity or a brand or a reputation that matches with the vision of the organization. If this does not happen, if without this very important first step, a public relations plan could basically damage the organization's identity or the industry in which it operates. There has to be an alignment between the identity or the brand of the event with the vision of the organizing company or the organization that is in charge of creating and developing and implementing the event. The next step is, after we've done that and we've made sure that there is an alignment, the next step is to identify the target groups for public relations. So our public relation activities may include various target groups. It could be targeted at the event organizers. It could be targeted at media representatives, at event attendees, at sponsors, at funding bodies, suppliers, volunteers. So all of these are potentially target groups for the public relation activities that we have in mind. Obviously, each group has different communication needs and expectations, and it's important to bear that in mind. So, for example, let's take the suppliers as an example. Suppliers of an event, say, if for example we're talking about food and beverage suppliers at an event, they obviously are more interested in certain aspects of the event. They want to know more about how the event is being managed, clear guidelines and agreements. They want to know exactly the visitor numbers, any change in visitor numbers, who might come to an event, why they are attending, if that impacts the type of food or beverage that they supply. So again, that's very important. That's the type of information they're looking for. Obviously, this information is very different to the information that a visitor, an event where a visitor is looking for and wants to be communicated. The next step is setting goals and objectives, and it's very important that when we're setting goals and objectives for our PR, that we also take into consideration the SMART acronym, that which we have previously discussed. So any goals or objectives in relation to our PR has to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time specific. So, for example, and you might think of an objective in relation to being included in a specific local newspaper 3 times during the event. So being cited or being mentioned or being talked about in a particular, and you can name the local newspaper 3 times during the duration of the event. That could be a particular as a potential objective. The next step, once you have your objective in place, is to come up with a PR strategy. And it could be that you sit with your staff and you brainstorm and identify and select strategies which will help you achieve the objective that you had in mind. So a strategy could be focusing on celebrity involvement, or it could be focusing on an important cause which could have an impact on different target groups. So a strategy could be, for example, media releases. It could be membership and loyalty programs, sponsorship. All of these different strategies are in line with should be in line with achieving the objectives that we've already set. Once we've developed the strategy, obviously the next step is to implement that strategy. And here it's important to distinguish between strategy and tactics. So let's take an example of a fundraising event. A public relations plan to promote a fundraising event might have as its goal to raise awareness for the cause and to encourage visitors to make donations. So that could be the goal of this particular fundraising event. Now, the strategy in order to help us achieve this goal could be to raise awareness through real-life stories of people who are affected by this cause and to support donations. Now, in order, that would be the strategy. Now, another strategy or an alternative strategy could be to position a main celebrity ambassador as the champion for the cause who could inspire others to get involved and make donations. So again, this is another strategy. Tactics, on the other hand, are more specific and they help us achieve the strategy that we had in mind. So it could be that we hold a media briefing where the celebrity ambassador talks about the cause, and it could be that we launch a competition for school children to write short stories inspired by making a difference, or a drawing competition where they draw something in relation to the cause. So again, this is a tactic which helps us achieve the strategy that we had in mind, which was raise awareness, which again is in line with achieving the objective that we had in mind. Now, also when in terms of planning implementation, it's important to be considerate of all the legal and ethical considerations. So a public relations program or activity that is illegal or unethical obviously risks is a big risk to the reputation of the event, and we have to be very careful when putting a plan together. Finally, the very last step is to evaluate and review the PR plan to see what went wrong, what was done well, and in order to learn from one plan and incorporate that into the next plan.